it's Derek here. We're going to go ahead and we're going to process a photo of mine. And this tutorial is really geared towards people who are new to astrophotography. I will be doing some other tools like Deep Sky Stacker and probably some Photoshop, but for now, my primary concentration is Pixinsight. It has become my one-stop shop, so to speak. I am a huge advocate for it, and I think for somebody who's just a hobbyist, it might be a little on the spendy side for you if you don't want to spend that kind of money. But if you want to get serious about it as a hobbyist or somebody who really wants to do the most with your pictures, I think it's excellent software. So we are going to start with a script, and that script is going to be batch processing. And the whole idea on this is to be able to calibrate our photos essentially and stack them. So I'm only going to do bias, darks, and lights today. So we're going to start with adding a bias photo, folder. Now the way I do it with mine is when I save my photos, I always make sure to have separate folders for everything. The whole idea behind that is so you don't have to worry about sifting through it. And in this case, I have 3 different objects I took pictures of that night. And it's a giant pain to sift through each folder and find the bias and find the darks for those. So we're going to go to bias, we're going to add our darks now. Oops, went too far there. All right. And we're going to add our lights. In this case, it's going to be M31. All right, now it's important to have a reference image. You can just choose any random one if you know that you have a good data set. A good rule of thumb is just go through your photos, even if you have a lot of them. If you think that you have any blurry photos or any trailing photos, or if you had too much drift, and you feel like it's not going to calibrate properly, just remove those, because like it or not, when you put them in here, it's probably going to find a way to put 1 or 2 of them in there, and you might see some minuscule details or maybe some really bad details of that photo that you didn't want in there. I've seen it once or twice, and I really feel that just tossing them out from the get-go is the best practice. Okay, so output directory. We want to select an output directory. In this case, I've already created one called tutorial. Click select folder, and we're going to click run. And as long as you don't have any errors, you should be able to click continue. Now in this case, I don't have any flat frames, that's fine. So we are going to click continue. I'm going to stop the video here because it does take a while to process these. And then we're going to go to the next step. Okay, and we're back. Now that we've done that, all the images are processed. We're going to exit. Click yes, we really do want to exit batch pre-processing. Now the important thing that we want to do here is go to process, all processes, and we're going to go to image integration. Now in this case, all of mine are there, so we're going to clear this. And we're going to click on add files. And what you're going to want to do in here is go to the folder that you selected as your output folder. And we're actually going to look for the registered photos. And we're going to go ahead and highlight all of these. Click open. And we are going to apply globally. And what we're going to be left with is one master photo. So let's hit apply global. We're going to wait for this. Now, depending on what you did, essentially to compare when you did the batch pre-processing, it's going to compare noise, any dead pixels, things like that. I really didn't do that many darks and that many bias photos, and I'm not too concerned with that on this pass around. But I will show you how to check for those kinds of things. Now, because there was probably a little bit of drift, what we will see in the final photos, oh, perfect, that's what we're looking for. What we should see is how they were stacked. So these are going to show up as just black, because that's how all of these are going to start. And we're actually going to go over here to Process Explorer, and we're going to go to Screen Transfer Function, and let's just go to Rejection High, and click on Auto Stretch. I'm not seeing anything in there, so I don't see any dead pixels. Rejection low. I don't see anything in there. But if we zoom out, you can see where it stacked the photos. So they're not all perfectly on top of each other. There's a little bit of discrepancy with some of them. You can tell that the strong average was in here. Okay, so you can exit out of that. Those are unimportant. They're just kind of a good way to see how it's stacked. We're at integration. This is going to be your master photo that we are now going to pre-process. And we're going to click on auto stretch, and we should be able to see what kind of data we have to work with. In this case, it looks pretty good to me. I'm pretty happy with that. So in some cases, and in most cases, I'm not sure why in this case I'm not seeing any stacking lines. But what you'll usually see is some black lines, or just a black background where maybe the photo's stacked. You'll see layer upon layer upon layer, and maybe some areas where there's just pixels that you can't, it's not part of the picture anymore. So you can go ahead, and we're going to crop this image, and you'd want to get rid of those by cropping out all of the bad dead areas that didn't stack. And we'll go and click execute, and we'll be left with a slightly smaller image. There we go. Okay, so now we're going to do background extraction. To do that, go to Processes, and we're going to go to Background Modelization, Automatic Background Extractor. If we wanted to do a really phenomenal job of getting rid of, let's say, I'm going to guess, we're going to get rid of most of this around here, and most of this around here. And what we should be left is a nice, wonderful, bright Andromeda. But I feel like we could end up having some areas, maybe towards the corners, where there's maybe some background that doesn't get removed. Now, if you do dynamic background extraction, you can concentrate on those and get rid of them if they exist. But we're just going to do the basics. Now, the correction is always going to be subtraction for this particular case. I'm not a big fan of replacing the target image, and the reason for that being is if you mess up halfway through and you want a fresh start, it's always nice to be able to come back to your cropped, basic, you don't have to click back. So we're going to leave this alone. I'm not going to replace the target image. We're going to leave it on subtraction, and we're going to apply this. There we go. Okay, now to see how well of how good of a job that you got on the background extraction, you can go to the background photo and auto stretch it, and there we can see we definitely have some background light that is invading our photo. This area, I'm surprised, is a little dark. I would expect this to be pretty consistent, and the corners are actually a little dark too, but overall, the area that we want to concentrate on, Andromeda, looks good. So let's see how the main picture stretches. Again, we're going to leave this in the background. Leave that alone. The new integration is going to be the photo we are going to process. Let's auto stretch that. That looks pretty good. I'm pretty happy with that. So now we're going to do background neutralization. We're going to choose an area that's nice and dark, the best background area that we can get. This looks pretty good right here. So let's select that. And to do that, you're going to go to New Preview Mode up here, or Alt-N. And I'm going to make a second preview, and that's actually going to encompass Andromeda. Okay, so we're going to go to Process, All Processes, and Background Neutralization. Now we're going to select the first preview, which is background. So that's what we're going to reference. Go ahead and apply this. Okay. The next thing we're going to do is color calibration. So let's go here to Processes, Color Calibration. And it's going to be the same thing. So it actually, instead of starting with the background reference, it starts with the white reference. So that's what we're going to select. So the white reference is going to be this. Now, if you're not sure what the preview is, we can go in here. You can actually kind of hover over it. So if you, let's say, have a picture and you have a ton of previews, you could always hover over this and see what it is. In this case, preview 1 is the background, preview 2 is Andromeda. So that's what we want for the white reference, and the background reference is going to be preview 1. Because this is a galaxy, turning structure detection on is actually important. This is the default settings. It should be 5 structured layers, 1 noise layer, and we are going to go ahead and apply this. There we go. That looks pretty good. Okay, so let's do our next step, which is going to be histogram transformation. Now we are done with these previews, so we can get rid of these for those who are annoyed by them. So we'll just go to preview and we'll go to delete all. Okay, now histogram transformation is important for this following reason. If I were to try and save this photo right now, it would not look like this, and that is because screen transfer function is turned on. If I turn that off, this is what's going to save. But we can fix that. So what we're going to do is go to Processes, All Processes, Histogram Transformation. Now this has already got a default curve on there. I'm going to reset this. And we're going to go to Screen Transfer Function and hover over New Instance. Now you're not going to click it. You're just going to drag and drop that onto the bottom bar of the histogram transformation. Let go. And you'll see that curve that I just reset, but this will let you see that it's actually done something. Now, what you should be able to do is go to Preview, and you'll see that the screen looks washed out. That's normal, because now you have Screen Transfer Function on top of Screen Transfer Function. So we're going to apply this. Okay, get rid of the preview. And now you see the washed out screen. Now all we have to do is go up here and turn the screen transfer function off by clicking the little computer screen right here. You can kind of hover over it if you're not sure what it is. The key is F12. And what we're left with now is the regular picture that we were looking at before, except now if you save it, you will actually see this. So I'm going to try and get a little bit more color out of this, and this is a trick that I learned from another tutorial. And what we're going to do is go up here, where it says Extract CIEL for Luminance Component. We are going to click that, and what we're going to be left with is the luminance. And we are actually going to hover the mouse over this. We're going to drag. No, I'm sorry, that would be for range mask. I'm sorry. Now we're going to go up to Processes, and we're going to do LRGB combination. And we don't want RGB checked, we just want the luminance checked. And we're going to click on Browse, make sure that that is the current view. Make sure that you click on the color picture. And I like to drag my saturation somewhere pretty close to 400. I feel like if you go down too far down here, you're going to be left with this really cartoony, ridiculous, just fake-looking photo. So I like to bring out just a little more light. So chrominance noise reduction should be on, and we're going to go ahead and apply that. Now it does take a few moments to process that, but what we're looking for is to see these stars in here where it's kind of orange, and some of the colors are in the blue. We should see that brighten up just a little bit, not much. Don't want it to be a ton. Okay, we're doing chrominance noise reduction right now. It's almost done. If you have a slower computer, not a lot of memory, this could take a little bit longer, especially if you're using raw photos. The larger the photo, the longer it takes. There we go, and I do see a little bit more color down there, so that's good. So we don't want it to look washed out with too much color. That looks pretty good. Got a little bit more detail in there. So now we're going to apply a mask, and it's important to understand how these work, because you can completely mess your photo up by doing this wrong, especially if you're applying effects with the wrong side of the mask inverted. So let's use range selection, and we're going to go ahead and by default, generally the lower limit is all the way down here. So I'm going to go ahead and click on preview so you can see that. And as you can see, we've just got a whole bunch of white. These are also set to 0. So we're going to drag this up. And what we're going to try and do, and you can see in here all of that background that we tried to get rid of, but we don't completely have it gone. What you want to have illuminated is the object that you want to keep. So in this case, we're going to try and get rid of that background. Keep the stars, and that looks pretty good. I don't know if we can go, and now we're clipping. I don't want to clip star data, so I want to have like a happy medium, but I want to get rid of that background. You know, let's go with about that much. I like to turn the fuzziness up just a little bit, not too much. And we're going to bring up the smoothness, which is going to make it kind of have a nice gradient, so it doesn't look like it's all pixelated and too grainy. Okay, good. Make sure that that is to the lightness, and we're going to apply. Okay, now what we have to do is apply this mask to the photo. So to do that, we're going to hover over where it says range mask, and we're going to drag that onto the integration. And it's going to turn red, and that's fine. Now we could just downsize this here because we don't care about that anymore. Get that out of the way. Okay, now we're going to do curves transformations, and this is important because this is going to allow us to get rid of the background noise, get rid of anything that we don't want to see in the background. To make that easier, let's turn off show mask, and we're going to go to curves. There you go, curves transformation. Now we're going to invert this so we're working on the background only. So, this photo, I don't need to play with the color curves. The color curves are fine. So we're just going to do RGBK. And we're going to just drag this down, and you should slowly see the background going away. Oh, I need to have the preview on first. Let's reset that so you can see it in real time. There we go. You can see all of the background area going away. Now, because we weren't able to get rid of all this background, we are clipping some star data. And you'll notice that it's not going to look perfect. This might look a little bit globular and not super smooth. That's why it's important, if you really want to do a good job on the background, to do dynamic background extraction. But we're just doing basic processing today. So again, the reason we're able to do this right now is because this mask is inverted. So we want to go ahead and let's just call that good for now. I think that's just a little too dark. Let's just drag this down a little bit. Yeah, there we go. Okay, I'm going to apply this. Okay, and now we should see that on integration, so that appears to have taken effect just fine. And we can do it again if you want to concentrate on Andromeda, but you don't necessarily need to. But if you're going to do that, you want to make sure invert mask is turned off. So let's say I wanted to change part of the galaxy. I wanted to bring down the RGBK levels, or bring down one of the RGB channels. Let's say we wanted to do blue, and we wanted to bring that up. You would make sure that the mask is not highlighted. And now we're working on Andromeda. So the only thing we should see change is Andromeda. Likewise, if we were to go back here and invert this again, we're just going to see anything on the other side of the mask. I hope that kind of makes sense. So each time you flip the mask, you're changing the concentrated area. So when we saw just the white areas, those are going to be the areas on what we're on now, where it's not inverted. So Let's leave those alone. Not going to change those. Turn off the preview. And our final step is going to be local histogram transformation. And what this is going to do is bring out just a little bit more detail in the arms of the galaxy. So these areas where you can see that it's kind of dark, but you can't tell there's a lot of detail, we should be able to bring some of that out. For some reason, by default, my Pixinsight likes to have this all the way up. And it's really ridiculous. I don't know why it does it. It was halfway last time because that's what I was using it at. Anyway, so you can see what it looks like with none. And we're going to go ahead and make sure that this is turned off. Now, this is important. Again, you want the mask to be inverted. I'm sorry, you actually don't want it to be inverted. If it's inverted, you want to make sure this is not highlighted. So we should be able to go in here and enable mask is the only thing you should see. If you don't, you're going to actually be applying your local histogram and transformation to the background. So in this case, we want to just apply to Andromeda. Here's what it looks like all the way up. Completely ridiculous. We don't want that. I'm going to slide it down to about a quarter of the way. And we want to see a little bit of the arm detail come out. I just want to see how much we can get here without completely killing it. Yeah, that's just way too much. So let's bring it back down about a quarter. And now we can see a little bit more detail around these areas. Let's bring it back down to nothing so you can see the difference. It's a little more smooth, but not as much detail. Bring it back up. Now we can see more detail. So we're going to go ahead and apply that. And it does take a little while to process, but it's not too terrible. Okay, and we're done. So we'll get rid of the real-time preview, and what we are left with is our final photo. So that is how, from beginning to end, we stack photos, integrate photos, and post-process photos, just from a basic workflow perspective in Pixinsight. Again, this is not the end-all workflow. This is just a very basic workflow. It's a quick way to bring out detail, and it's a good way to go through and see what kind of data you have. And depending on the object, it's a good way to have a final process. So I want to show you before, though, just so you can, if you're new to astrophotography, you can kind of compare. So we're going to open a random that I had open here in Photoshop, and this is what we actually started with. So as you can see, there's a lot of light saturation in there. There was a little bit of pollution in the area. It wasn't terrible, but there was some. So you can see all that background that we got rid of, and you can still see some of the detail of Andromeda, but after you integrate the photos and everything is in there, this is your final result. So if you have any questions, let me know. I will leave a quick workflow in the details in the comments, so that anybody wants to follow them, you can do so. And if you want a more detailed workflow, just drop me an email, and I'll send you one. And I hope this helps somebody. Cheers.